So I'm here with Scott from Frightened Rabbit, which you actually kind of are Frightened Rabbit in a sense.
Yeah, originally it was my project. I just called myself. It was gonna be like I was really into Badly Drawn Boy at the time, and I was like kind of wanting to be that kind of character. But then I got a band, and they were like, "Are we a band or are we just your like session musicians?" So yeah, it turned into a 5-piece.
And you started back in, was it around 2003?
Yeah, I wasn't taking it very seriously at that point. So I guess you could chart it back to the very conception of it there, where I was like playing in pubs, songs that I hadn't even finished writing the lyrics for and stuff. I don't even recognize who that person was. He was in that case, I guess. But yeah, it wasn't very good for a really long time.
So if you did start around 2003, though, that kind of makes it around about your 10th anniversary this year.
Yeah. But like I say, it's not the 10th anniversary of actually being anything close to a proper entity. But yeah, I suppose that was when I first started writing songs, when I was just finishing up in college and mucking about in Glasgow with friends, opening for friends' bands. So yeah, it makes me feel old. No. 10 years.
So going back to those days, what was it? Do you remember the defining moment that made you want to pick up an instrument and become a singer and a songwriter and perform to the world?
Well, I think... Actually, it was funny because I was a guitar player since the start of high school, and I never saw myself as a singer. I didn't sing, I didn't write songs. I just was interested in like big heavy riffs and like grunge and stuff like that. And then I think I got my heart broken, so that's really pivotal. And I actually had something to write about. And also I discovered, when I moved to Glasgow, that was a big moment. From a smaller town in the south of Scotland, moving to Glasgow, and having this whole raft of new music opened up to me, and so stuff like Mogwai and Belle and Sebastian and the Delgados and all that stuff was just like suddenly on my radar, and it changed everything.
Yeah. Because now, you sort of, your influence is sort of more Americana, sort of Jeff Tweedy, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Back then, were there any sort of, other Scottish folk sort of influences that you liked, or was your music totally different back then?
No, it wasn't. I remember, I was initially taught the basics of guitar by my dad, and he and my mum were from the north of Scotland, and they used to play in folk clubs up there and stuff. So there's definitely, even from a very early age, it was around in the house, and I think it's not many Scottish writers who aren't influenced by that method of storytelling and the history of folk music. So yeah, it's sort of in the blood, and I think once you pare a lot of our music down, it's essentially at its core it is still telling a story and using that kind of narrative.
Yeah, I totally agree with that actually. Your songs definitely are a storytelling thing. But you're out here in Australia anyway, touring for the Groove of the Moo Festival.
Yeah.
And a bunch of side shows which are selling out everywhere, which is pretty exciting.
It's really, it's great. I can't believe it.
Yeah, and this is your 4th time to Australia. So how much has it grown, or how much have you noticed that it's grown since the first time that you came out here?
Yeah, it's definitely. The first time we came out here was a really ad hoc affair. We were, it was kind of the enthusiasm of one person who brought us out and booked us some shows, and it was great. And we were just playing wherever we could. But now, we've actually built a fan base, and feel like there's a kind of loyal set of people out here who are really interested in Frightened Rabbit still. We weren't sure because it had been 2.5 years since we were last here, so we weren't sure if anyone still remembered or even cared, or they just moved on to Flume or something like that. So it's nice to know that people still give a shit.
Yeah. And you've played like all the big festivals out here. You've played Laneway, Splendor, Woodford, and now Groove in the Moo.
Indeed, yeah. So yeah, there's a massive. I think outside of the UK, Australia has probably got the largest festival kind of tradition.
Yeah.
And there seems to be so many that you can play. So I don't think we've even covered all the bases yet, but yeah, it's a unique. But again, it's like a unique way of having a festival because they tour and it sort of brings you to, especially Groove in the Moo, like brings you to sort of more regional fan bases or people who would never have the opportunity to come and even come to Sydney or Melbourne and see a headline show. So it's been. So great.
Where's been your favourite place so far for Groove in the Moo? Because you've done Townsville. Maybe
Townsville,
Canberra.
Yeah, they've all had their interesting quirks. I think, Townsville seems like a bit of a party town, and so there was like.
Does it?
It seemed that way at the time. They were right off their faces.
Yeah,
there.
right.
Yeah. So I think they really were getting locked into some of the rappers that were on before us, and were slightly unsure of Frightened Rabbit there.
Yeah.
But like Bendigo was the best one so far. I really enjoyed that one. It felt like there was a good portion of the crowd who actually knew who we were, and then there was also a bunch of like casual listeners who were getting into it as the set went along. So yeah, but it's been great across the board. Really interesting festival to play.
And it sounded great in Bendigo as well.
Great. Well, I'll pass that on to Ian, who's
do.
our magical sound man.
He is very magical. It sounded amazing.
Great.
So you've worked with Peter Cadis. A lot on a couple of records, but now you're working with Leo Abrams.
Mm-hmm.
What was the decision to work with someone different for this record, and how did the two producers' approaches differ?
They are. The reason was we sort of decided from the outset of this record, it was a new label, it was a new approach to writing, so we'd started writing more collectively.
Yeah.
Certainly the music, I've still got the lyrics, I still sort of take care of that, but so in every sense we wanted something fresh and new. So Leo was presented to us by the label, and I wasn't even aware of his work before then. I'd heard stuff that he'd done, but didn't know he was behind it. And so Peter's got this sort of everything you do goes through his kind of filter, and it's quite a strong one. Like he's got a really strong sound to every record that he does. It's very very powerful and kind of meaty. And Leo is much more subtle. Like Leo worked with Brian Eno for like 11 years, and he's taken on a lot of his method of working. Like I remember him telling me that one of Brian's favourite like tricks is to make the band feel like they're having all the ideas, when in fact they're not. And then he told me this.
But it's a good trick though.
So it's a good trick. He's a really subtle kind of Zen-like presence in the studio, and so hopefully the relationship with Leo will continue into other records, because it was really fruitful, and he made us feel like we were having all the ideas.
We were.
Maybe.
Didn't you know?
I had a couple. Yeah.
And you did a lot of writing on the road for this one as well, didn't you?
Yeah, bits and pieces. I think it's hard to get something finished on the road, but it's nice to just like gather things on like your voice memo or little snippets, and then once you get home, finding out what's actually worth pursuing. So yeah, we did a fair bit, and we road tested for the first time. We actually road tested material live before we got into the studio, which made I think made the recordings feel a lot more, at ease with themselves rather than feeling too fresh and edgy.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was my next question. And did you how much have they changed?
They changed a lot, because I think we'd noticed one of the reasons for taking that tack was that we'd noticed old songs from other records over time, like taking on like metamorphosis on the road, and that's a really exciting thing. So we wanted to get part of that process done before we even got to the studio, so the songs felt developed, and like I say, like kind of there was a comfort level that we had with the songs. We knew them inside out, and they had developed a bit on the road. So yeah, no, it was a really important process to like advancing the songs beyond where we thought we might be able to take them.
The album's quite stylistically more eclectic than your previous ones. Was that a conscious effort, or did they just end up sort of doing it themselves?
Well, that was a natural thing, given that the previous records have been written, the way they've been written, I would go away in solitude for, a few weeks, and essentially would have the album done by the time I came back, and we'd present these songs fully formed to the band. Now, this time around, it was a semi-solitude, so I was like in a studio, but the door was open, so everyone was welcome to come and, contribute and collaborate. So that naturally just, bringing 4 extra heads into things does make it a more eclectic mix of influences and people's tastes. Specifically Andy is, he's quite into kind of electronic music and weird German techno, and he's a bit of a weirdo actually, but him bringing that, I've got a certain way that I like to write songs, and it was really important that was challenged this time around, because I think it'd become a bit boring, and I was bored of my own songs, to be honest, and so I think it needed a shot in the arm, and that was the most obvious way, I think, of doing so.
You guys have just been announced on some shows with the National in the US, which is pretty cool.
I know. For them, they're like one of my top bands of all time. I'm gonna have to try and remain cool and pretend I'm not a total fanboy. But I can't believe that's happening. I'm really, really pleased.
Yeah, that's cool. And because you guys have toured a fair bit in the States.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. And how much has that changed over the years too? Because I think you're now at the point where you're kind of selling out shows over there as well.
Yeah, I mean although it was quite a quick uptake over there for us. We had the help of, Pitchfork was great and kind initially, and although I think there's a really strong association with Scottish music over there. I think we were almost sort of stepping into a path that had been beaten down for us by bands like Mogwai and Bell and Sebastian. There was a hunger already for something new from the country. So yeah, it started off really quickly, but then it's always gone from strength to strength, and we're really lucky that we've got a proper fan base out there, because it's not handed to you on a plate.
No,
it's
hard.
tough. Yeah.
It's a big country.
Really lucky. Yeah, we've worked hard. I mean, but this tour we just did, that's like our 12th tour over there. So doesn't, like I say, it's not handed on a plate. It takes miles and miles.
Yeah, lots of driving and tour bands, Anyway, we've got to wrap it up, but there was one little thing that I read somewhere, and I just wanted to ask you about that. Mm-hmm. Is it true that you guys used to send out demo tapes to people when you first started?
Yeah. And
that at some point you started sending cookies or biscuits?
Yeah, there was biscuits with them. Well, the idea was, I think it was just a few things that we did to try and make the kind of receiving our music memorable in a way, because you have to stick out in some way. And so I figured, if you didn't like the music, then at least you could enjoy a sugary treat.
So were you baking the cookies?
No, I wasn't. I really should have.
I was thinking you were probably sending out pot cookies or something like.
No, no.
Enjoy the music.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea actually.
Except that it's legal.
They were. No, they were just normal, like ones with shortbread with raisins in them. And if you did like the music, then you could enjoy the accompaniment of a tasty biscuit as well.
Eating the biscuit, listening to the music.
But that was like 8 years ago now, and I suppose the fact that we're talking about it means that it kind of worked, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I read that and I was like, that is awesome. I would love to get cookies from a band that I liked. Yeah. So, anyway, thanks so much for your time today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the rest of Australia.
Great, will do.